James Ham of the Insiders as we gear up for a busy week. Of course, we're gearing up for the national championship tonight, UConn and Purdue. We're going to be out at Tom's Watch Bar in Doco. We would love to see you. There are 4 million TVs at Tom's Watch Bar. We're going to have a good time. We heard they had a 2-day WrestleMania party there. We'll see if they could throw Raw on one of those TVs. But we're going to have a good time out there. Come through. The Michelob Ultra is going to be flowing. We're going to have a great time watching UConn and Purdue tonight. And even if you're not,
any predictions?
I'll go. I picked UConn earlier. I won't deviate from that. I'll just stick with that. I know. You told me.
I need Purdue.
I got you. I didn't say I was rooting for UConn. I root for the family to get paid. Everybody got to eat.
Me and the Sean Cunningham, we're doing well in a pool.
Okay.
We need one last win. One win.
You care to disclose?
No.
Oh, wow. You know it's a lot when you can't say how much it is. I like it. Hey, I'll be a Boilermaker for Hammer tonight. And even if you're not that interested in the game, just come hang out with us.
Yeah.
We're gonna be outside.
Come by for sure.
Be outside. You know, I don't ever go outside.
Shout out to my guy, Coach Chris. He is him and Young Zell. Actually, we got some all-stars. Coach Chris, Young Zell tied for first in the D-Lo and KC Bracket Challenge.
Okay.
And Javon Stallworth is third.
All right, Javon. I see you, boy.
I think I'm last.
Oh.
Well, it's okay.
I did poorly in that pool.
I'm 41st.
Hammer, that pool was going to pay you nothing. If you did well in a pool that's going to pay you, that's the only one that matters.
Ain't that the facts, Jack?
So come through and see us tonight, Tom's Watch Bar. We'd love to see you. I say tonight. I'm talking about like an hour and a half. Come see us at Tom's Watch Bar.
Oh, James, you're only 79.
Out of
80.
Who's 80?
Daniel Yoon.
Step it up, Daniel.
You got to try to be this bad.
Hammer, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Kenny's had some strong opinions on it as well. What does Colby Jones and what we saw from Mike Brown, and perhaps more importantly, what we haven't seen from Harrison Barnes, particularly yesterday, what story do you think that's telling over the course of the next 4 games?
I think the story it tells is that Mike Brown is coaching his behind off. Like, he doesn't care who you are and what you mean to the franchise and how long you've been there and how many games in a row you've played. If you're not going to step up in this moment, then he's going to go to someone else that can. And whether that's a rookie or it's a second-year guy who was a two-way player halfway through the season, or it's Kessler Edwards who's in the final year of his contract, he doesn't care. Put up or go sit on the bench. And I think that that's what Mike has to do in this situation. But doing that, us saying that is one thing. Actually, as a coach, putting your veteran, your leader on the bench for 11 minutes and having him play 11 minutes and playing a rookie in the final week and a half of the season, it's bold. But what do you got to lose? Like, if I'm going to put you in the Knicks game in the fourth quarter after you haven't done anything the entire game, and the first thing you're going to do is turn the ball over. Like, what is Mike Brown supposed to do? Like, and I'll say this again. It's unfortunate. The Kings have a couple of players who have, like, they've shown you who they are. And, like, for this team to take the next steps, they have to have people who are ready to take that next step with the core. And some guys just, they're not there yet, or they're not made for it, or whatever. But, like, man, you have every opportunity in the world. You have two of your top scorers from last year are gone. They might not, one of them is done for the year. One of them might not even be able to make it back if you make it to the playoffs. Everybody's got to step up.
Mm-hmm.
And I see Alex Lynn out there stepping up. And I see Keon Ellis. And I see Davion Mitchell. And I see Trey Lyles. You know, I see Keegan Murray. We've been waiting for Keegan Murray to shoot 18 times a game. Now in the last 5 games, he shot 18 times 3 times. So, like, where is this step up from everyone involved? And it's just, man, you got to do it.
You know, James, I talked about this on Friday. I don't think I talked about it with you. Mentioned a little bit to Dame when he came in for his run in. But when it comes to Harrison, man, I hate to sound like our people in the Bay Area, but I just feel like you can't trust him. You can't trust him in the biggest of moments when them lights are the brightest, when you need him the most. You can't trust that he's going to show up.
You know, I think that there are plenty of moments that we can point to where Harrison Barnes has in the past.
When the lights are bright, when
Yeah,
you really need him.
I mean, we remember him missing the shot in Game 4, right? Again, well, you can go back to his time with the Warriors, but the shot in Game 4 this season, this last playoff, where the ball rimmed out. Like, the fact that he took that shot, it shows me he was ready. I just think that, you know, for whatever reason at this point, he's played a lot of games, he's played a lot of minutes, and all of a sudden it's like you have every single opportunity here to seize a moment and to step into a role where you're averaging 15 to 20 a game and helping this team get over the hump. And he hasn't been able to do it. And so, you know, I don't know what to say because it's tough. Harrison Barnes, you know, certainly in the last couple of games of the playoffs was not great. He had 6 points. He had 4 points in the last 2 games. He was also limited. You know, that's where Mike Brown pulled the plug and put him to 15 minutes and 14 minutes in the last 2 games of the playoffs last year. But, you know, Game 3, he had 17 points. You know, he had 13 points in Game 1, 2, and 5. It's not like he didn't show up at all. And, you know, but that's not what I can, like Kevin Huerter's numbers in the playoffs. Holy cow. Like, and you can go back and it's multiple times that we've seen this. So like he had one really good playoff series early on, and then, you know, a couple of really suspect playoff series, and that was for Atlanta before we got to Sacramento. And then again, he just couldn't figure out how to perform on that stage. Maybe they have to, again, for a guy like Kevin, maybe he needs more time. Maybe he needs to grow into it. But again, like, the Kings don't have time to wait for these guys to figure it out. It's got to be on to the next. And then this summer, it's got to be on to the next. So if these guys they can't figure out how to fit in and they can't figure out how to be impactful playing alongside Sabonis and Fox, then okay, it's time to, like, if you want to be a 50-win team, you want to be a team that wants to compete for a championship, you got to make changes.
And I understand the things that you're saying. I think we're saying kind of the same thing. But last 4 games of the season, we need them. Mm-hmm. How many times do you think HB going to score 15-plus points?
In the last 5?
In the last 4 games. No, that's my whole point. Not that he's not capable, but how can you have confidence in that? How can you, as he has not shown you the ability to which you could have confidence, be like, oh, 3 of those games, he for sure going to get 15-plus points. I think if we ask somebody right now, majority of people would say 0.
I think it's tough because he has been reliable for the Kings for years. And then all of a sudden this season, it just like, especially the whole first half, it was just like, what in the world? You know, like the team meeting, they had the team meeting after he took 2 shots, right? And then boom, all of a sudden he looks like Harrison Barnes again. Like, do you need another team meeting real quick? Like, what is it that you need to get you over the hump? Because
those type of people concern me. Whether they're teammates, coworkers, whatever, if they constantly need to be reminded about something, like, that's a problem.
You can't trust them.
No, yeah. I agree. But I think for a long time, you could trust Harrison Barnes. It's just now, whatever it is this season, you feel like you can't.
Well, you can trust them. You can trust them in January against Indiana when you're 7 games below 500. And he's going to show up and he's going to play. But we got 4 games left. We probably got to go 4-0. Not like if he plays good, they're going to win. But just, I need you to perform.
Go down swinging.
Yeah, I
if
need
you're going
15
down.
plus for the rest of the season. Matter of fact, I'll even stall you out a little bit. I need 15 plus shot attempts every game. We can't even rely on that.
I think what's crazy is that we're talking about the last 4 games. He's got 6, he's got 0, he's got 10, he's got 2. The 2 games before that, he had 24 and 20. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't know what to say because he wasn't broken like a week and a half ago. You know, the game against Dallas where they almost beat Dallas at home and you lost by 4. Like he scored 24 points in that game or 20 points in that game.
That goes to my point, though. That goes to my point. And I like HB regardless of what the sign says. I like HB. But after that, Malik Monk goes down. Yo, we need you to step up. You can't just kind of float around no more. I need 20 every night, or I need 15 plus every night. I need you to shoot the ball every night because we got nowhere else to go. And what do the numbers look like since we really needed him in that crunch?
Yeah. No, I mean, moving forward, like whether Harrison Barnes, and again, I'm going to lump Kevin Huerter in the same exact story because it's been my concern. Like, look, man, like these lulls, these swoons in your season, you just can't have them. And for that matter, hey, I'll say it. De'Aaron Fox has had way too many swoons this year. Like this year, he's had way too many swoons. The month of January, where he wouldn't talk to the media and all that stuff. Dip. The post All-Star break, you're waiting for him to get back. Like he's had a couple of games over 30. He's got a 40 piece, but he's also had a bunch in the teens. And so this team, I think expectations hit them hard. And then on top of that, I think trying to fight through expectations, like they've tried to stay in it. They've played a ton of minutes. They're you're relying so heavily on Sabonis and Fox. And the fact that some of these guys haven't stepped up and consistently helped out has put so much more burden on Sabonis and on Fox. And it's allowed opposing defenses to just crush those guys. Like they're all over Sabonis. They're all over Fox trying to get him from, stop him from going downhill. And a lot of it is just because, hey, look, like, are we going to fear whether Harrison Barnes is having an on night or if he's going to score 6 or if he's going to score 20. We'll probably find out in the first couple of minutes of the game whether he's going to score 6 or 20. And if he's not going to score 20, then let's just double team and let's take away De'Aaron Fox and let's take away Domantas Sabonis. And that's something where, like, again, this team is going to have to do some soul searching in the summer and make some tough changes.
Yeah, and those might be conversations for like 2 weeks from now, but like they got to have conversations today. Because they got games to win. Like, yeah, Mike and Monty can figure out whatever it is, and West and all those guys, they can figure out how to improve this team in the offseason with or without a draft pick. But they have to, hopefully it's without, because that means you've navigated these last 4 games correctly. And I just don't know how you do that without Harrison Barnes against Oklahoma City. Like I could see how you can get through Brooklyn, with that. And, maybe I what you said on me earlier wasn't lost, but I could see how you could do that against Portland. I don't know how you do that over the course of those 3 games in between, or those 2 games in between, excuse me, with New Orleans and Phoenix.
Well, and how much you need him against the Pelicans. He's the guy that you've put on Zion to try to wall him off and slow him down. Like you need him so bad. And the problem,
and if this team does wind up playing a play-in game or 2, you're going to need him in those.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're facing LeBron, you need Harrison Barnes. If you're facing the Warriors, you're facing again the Pelicans or the Suns. Like you got to figure it out. Whatever it is that's going on, you got to figure it out, and you have to get him engaged. And whether that's running plays for him early or whatever it is, because I mean, again, I'm just gonna say it like straight up. He's not hiding from anyone. Mike sees the same exact thing we do because against the Knicks, he played 14 minutes and 47 seconds. Against Brooklyn, he played 11 minutes and 15 seconds. That's after playing again against that Dallas game we talked about. He played 40 minutes. The Utah game, 29 minutes. Like this is a guy you rely on for heavy minutes. And if Mike is seeing the same thing we are, then he has to be concerned. And that's why look at this kitchen sink time, man. You throw somebody out there, they can give you 3 minutes and they're playing great. Okay, maybe you get 5. If they can make it to 5, maybe you get 8. Okay, next time around, if you're not good enough in the second half, okay, I'm going to throw Sasha Vezenkov out there. I'm going to throw Kessler Edwards out there. I'm going to try to mix it up. And even Kessler got an opportunity a couple of games ago. He wasn't great in the first half and just didn't look like he was fitting into the game plan. Mike came back with Sasha in the second half and found a little bit of gold. And that's what I think, again, we're watching Mike do the best he can to get through without realistically their primary scorer off the bench and without Malik Monk, who's like their energy. It's tough, but if you're an NBA player, you got to want this opportunity. Like, it doesn't matter if you're 23 years old or 22 years old like Colby Jones, or if you're 32 years old like Harrison Barnes. Like, you should want the opportunity to go out there and put your stamp on a game. And right now, we're just not seeing it.
Is Colby Jones the kitchen sink?
Yeah, I mean, you got to love Colby Jones, what he's bringing. I was telling Jesse earlier, like, it's tough to come up with a player comp because we haven't seen that much of him. But there's a reckless abandon and like every single play you see him. And the player that reminds me of is Manu Ginobili. And I'm not saying that Colby's going to be Manu, but the type of skill set where you're really a jack of all trades, master of none. That's what I think, again, Manu was just brilliant. Every time a big rebound needed to happen, you saw him just sell out, throw his body out in the middle of nowhere, not knowing where he's going to land and try to go grab a ball. And when you need him to D up somebody specific, he's there. But when you need him to all of a sudden show up off screen and pop into the play and double team somebody out of nowhere, it's like there's an instinctual play that Colby Jones has, that the type of style and the type of player he is, that he's always going to be around the ball. It's almost like Hafunga. Like, it doesn't matter where the ball goes, there he is. You're like, where did he come from? And that's where I'm just super impressed. Like the play where he almost won the game against Boston and gets fouled at the end, but doesn't get the call. But also there was a play right before that where he went in, flew past Sabonis and grabbed a rebound that was just so impressive. So I like his game. I don't know what it means long term, but this is what the G League is for. It should be to create players that can fill these types of roles. And I think that we're starting to see the sort of the fruits of the G League's labor here in Sacramento after a couple of years with Monty. I think he grew up in the Rocket system, McNair did, and they did a lot of work with the Vipers, and they brought a lot of players up. And that's what you have to do when you've got superstars who are making 40 or 50 million bucks. You got to have a pipeline of players like this that can help your team in a pinch. And Colby's just, it looks like another cog in the system right now for the Kings.
Another guy, James, off that bench yesterday is somebody that you talked about earlier in Davion Mitchell, who may have changed the whole trajectory of his career, his time with the Kings. You and Jesse kind of broke that down about, the way he's played since the All-Star break. This is a guy that you probably want around in your program if you're Monty McNair and Mike Brown, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like, at some point he was either going to have to figure it out, or he was going to play himself out of the league. Like, and it's such a delicate balance. I mean, you're an undersized point guard who has defensive skills. And I've said this to you guys so many times, and I know so many people out there think I don't like Davion Mitchell. And it's just not the case. I just watch him. He's the opposite of what I'm talking about with Colby Jones. You just see Colby all the time in a positive way. Everything he's doing, whether he's out of control or not, or whether he's falling on the floor, or he's diving, he's grabbing a rebound, he's making a pass, he's hitting a floater, whatever it is, you see him. And then the opposite with Davion, you see him, but it's because it doesn't feel right. Everything he's doing doesn't look like it's in the flow. And then all of a sudden the light bulb went on. And I'm really, really happy for him because he is such a hard worker and he's a good kid and he wants to be great and he puts all this effort in the defensive end. But if you can't ever sort of figure out how to fit into a team concept on both ends of the court, then you're not going to make it. And, this free-flowing offense that the Kings have, it just wasn't built for him. And then all of a sudden he just said, you know what? I'm a ball player. I'm just going to go play. I'm going to stop worrying about where I should be. And you see it. that's what I'm super impressed.
There were a lot of conversations about Davion's future with this team around the trade deadline. Do you think the last couple of months have changed that?
You know what? It's possible maybe to add a wrinkle to that all of those conversations and then him being here was him kind of having a realization mode that, like, look, maybe there isn't a huge market for me and maybe I need to figure it out. And maybe I need to get with a coaching staff and have them help me figure it out during the All-Star break. And why is it that this thing isn't working the right way? And I think that there's a possibility that he's changed who he is to this team. But I also know that, like, look, we're about to go through a summer of change. And the Kings are close, and they've got a bunch of pieces that are part of what the future is. But then you also have a lot of pieces that could quickly go from a reserve point guard or a reserve forward or a reserve shooting guard to an expiring contract and the way you view them. And I don't know what's going to happen with him, but you can start stacking up contracts pretty quick where a Davion Mitchell, Chris Duarte trade is $12 million worth of expiring contract. You add in Trey Lyles, now you're at $20 worth of expiring contract. So I don't want to look at players like that, but that's certainly where Davion was heading. And now you have to, it can still work out that way. That's just who they have to be in the bartering business. It is the NBA. But I definitely, I think he's showing that he can be more.
This is why people don't like Davion. It sounded like you just wanted to trade him.
No, I'm telling you that, like, if you have to.
No, I get it.
Look,
you got to get better. The point is you got to get better. I just think Davion's played really well since it feels like the pressure turned up, since Mike put him back in the rotation, since Mike's been consistent with what his ask is of Davion. I feel like he's been one of the Kings' more consistent players.
Oh, I think recently for sure. But I also think that it's him letting go. You can see it. Like, he's like, no, I'm just going to go do it. I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to, if I have to apologize afterwards, I will. But I'm just going to go play. And that's where I think he's changed. I think you hate seeing a player on the court that you can see the wheels turning in their head. Because then it's not going to work out.
Do you still think that's happening?
No.
Okay.
I think that changed. And again, it may be a little bit before the All-Star break, but certainly during the All-Star break and when they had that players-only meeting, not the first meeting where they had the coaches and everybody and had a big conversation, but the players-only meeting, it's almost like guys started to feel empowered from that. And just like, stop worrying about it. Just go out there and play. If you're playing 2 minutes, you're playing 25 minutes. Whatever it is, put it all out there. And you can see when a player is holding back or when a player's lost in the moment and confused. And I didn't know if Davion would find it here. And it's possible that he still does, that he figures it all out and that he secures himself as like a indispensable piece off the bench for the Kings. But it's also possible that everyone knows who he is and what he's doing right now for the Kings is actually helping his value, and the Kings might look for something different. Look, you got to get bigger, you got to get stronger, you got to get longer. We all know that. You have to get more athletic. This team does. And that means every position on the floor has to be looked at in that way. How do I get, a lengthier, more defensive-minded player at every single position? And I think Davion can fit without any question at this point. I did not feel that way for the last 2 years.
So let me ask you a big picture question. Both of you guys, really. Last week of the season, Kings are, 8th seed, I think, right now, fighting for a play-in. Got 45 wins, I think it is. Do you think this team underachieved this year? Or are they about maybe what they should be? And, you also got to factor in, I think, you lose Malik Monk. That's one of your top 3 players. You're losing him for about 3 weeks or so. I've already lost them for 2-3 weeks. So, but what you think about this team, big picture? Do you think they underachieved?
I don't think so. I think they are exactly who we thought they were. That we would have liked to have seen them like not lose some of these games and to show some of the resiliency and stuff like that. But I think we all knew coming into the season that they had holes. Like, in order to get to a certain point, they needed to add this and this and this, and they didn't do that. And so, like, look, can we expect a team last year that was surprisingly good to have a whole bunch more increased pressure and expectations in year 2 with the same exact crew? I mean, there is something to what Mike says about, hey, look, a couple of our guys had career years last year. Like Kevin Huerter had averaged 12 points a game for his career and comes in and averages 15. Malik Monk had never found like consistent playing time until a short stint with the Lakers. And then boom, he's like your everything off the bench. So like all of these expectations, Keegan Murray's a rookie, like a lot of guys playing above anywhere that they ever had before. Even Fox, he had averaged 25 points a game, but he had never averaged it like he did last year. Same thing with Sabonis. He had averaged close to what he was doing, and all of a sudden, boom, he takes off. Like, I think that this team really just found like some sort of weird kismet last year where they fit in together and they grew together and everything worked. Sometimes it doesn't work out in year 2, and that's where you have to be flexible, and you've got to see what's happening, and you got to make the moves to improve the team. And I'm sure that that's what they're going to look at hard this summer.
And I think a lot of people in the chat talking about they ran it back and, the front office underperformed. I think that's a little unfair to the situation. It's not – we try to lay this out for you guys as much as possible. It's not as simple as see player, go get player. In free agency, there's guys that you may target in free agency. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
You've got to want the guy, and then they've got to want to come play for you. You know what I mean? So there's that. Maybe you want somebody, they get a better offer somewhere financially. That factors in. Trades. There's a number of different things that factor into a trade. A lot of people talk about P.J. Washington and going to Dallas and how that's turned things around, and Daniel Gafford. Tell me if I'm wrong. It doesn't feel like the Kings had those type of assets, or maybe we're willing to give up those type of assets for those type of players. So just running it back, that's a little – to me, that's a little lazy. It's not telling the whole story, when you talk about running back. Number one.
That's not wrong, though. They did. It doesn't mean they didn't try to.
Well, that's the implications of it, that they just like, oh, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to try to do anything.
They were content.
Yeah.
I got you.
And I don't think that's necessarily fair to how that played out over the summer.
What do you think? Do you think they underachieved?
I think I'm with James. They're about where they're at, all things considered. We can talk about those games that they should have won, but I think you could say they overachieved by going 7-1 against teams like the Nuggets and Lakers. You know what I mean? Those balanced out a little bit. Fox was hurt for a little bit. Monk is hurt for a little bit, and they found a way to still possibly be a 6 seed and win 48, 49 games. So I think they're about where they should be.
48 wins would be pretty amazing, because it is very literally exactly what they finished with last year. Mm-hmm. And for a team that so many people are, whether frustrated with or otherwise, ran it back, you got the same result. I would argue, and again, I'm sorry my brother's not healthy, like Huerter underachieved. Like Kevin Huerter's,
no question,
season in every sense of the word, most importantly, the way that it ended, was really kind of disastrous. Now we can spend an entire offseason, which is hopefully weeks and weeks away, talking about why that may have been. I think we all have our feelings on it, and I think there are plenty of people, to blame. But in the end, Kevin's the player, and his performance wasn't good enough. Harrison's is weird. Like, I don't even know how much different like Harrison Barnes's numbers are from this year to last year. But the one thing we said, like, if Harrison really just scored 11 points per game, the conversation would be different. But it's your old, that's what averages are for. What we didn't realize is with HB this year, the averages are broken down into gigantic chunks of the season, where it's not like, oh man, Harrison hasn't really been himself the last 5-6 games. James pointed out, De'Aaron really ain't been himself the last 12 games or so. Yeah, Harrison wasn't really himself for 41 games.
Jeez.
And then, he leveled up, and it's like, all right, now we're cooking again, and now we're kind of getting more of a to what James was talking about earlier, a little bit more of an off and on rather than a completely off. We're getting the off and on that I think we're kind of accustomed to with Harrison Barnes. And the fact that it's happening at the worst time, the fact that it's happening right now is the worst case scenario, I think, for the Kings.
Well, I think the bigger problem too,
given the situation with the other guys on the roster.
Well, yeah, totally. But I think the problem that we have is that we're looking at 4 games that mean everything, right? It's just 4-game sprint, and your veteran is having just a complete downturn. And if somehow he can piece together 4 perfect games, like, it gives you a much, much better opportunity of making it to the postseason. But then what? Because I can't expect 11 consecutive games. I can't expect 12 or 15 consecutive games that are the perfect, and no player's perfect. Players miss shots. It's not even that. It's not the missed shots. It's not anything else. I mean, Harrison Barnes shooting 39.2% from 3. He's shooting better from 3 than he did last year. Per 36, 15 points, 3.6 rebounds, very similar to who he was last year. It's just that we're watching him take less and less and less of the pie and not be able to step up in these moments. And truly, it's the physicality aspect that I think we can point to. Like, this is a guy who, again, he's shooting 47.6% from the field. Last year, he shot 47.3%. He's only averaging 0.7 less shots per game than he did last year. Where the real thing I see is the free throw line, where he's averaging literally 3 free throws less per game. And that just tells you that, number one, he's shooting a whole lot of threes, although that number doesn't even bear out. 4.3 attempts last year to 4.7. He's just not getting to the free throw line. He's not showing the physicality on the offensive end, and some nights on the defensive end as well.
You can't miss on the defensive end.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the frustrating thing. You can't miss on the defensive end. You can't miss on the offensive end right now. Just for everything. And it's funny, everyone was willing to point out what happened with Sacramento last year with, they were the healthiest team in the league. Y'all pointing out what's going on now?
No, of course not.
Are y'all pointing out that the 6th man of the year isn't playing?
Right.
Are y'all pointing out that they lost all of their depth at the 2-guard position? Because it feels like people sure like to pick and choose when this healthy, unhealthy argument plays in. Y'all better talk about the Sacramento Kings the same way you talked about the New Orleans Pelicans last year. Better talk about the Sacramento Kings the same way you talked about the Minnesota Timberwolves last year. Because I don't hear none of them doing that.
What about a Lakers team that just walked into one of the most important games of the season? LeBron doesn't play, and AD goes and sits in the first half. Like, okay. I mean, the Kings, the one thing I'll keep saying, they're gritty. They're fighting. It's not that they want to lose or they're trying to give up here or there. They haven't been able to find that rhythm that allows them to find long-term success. Like, if they could have had one 7-game win streak, like in the second half of the season, this team would be just right where we expected them to be. But they were just never able to find that. Every time that they started to build on something, they take one step back. And that's a tough way to make it through the season, especially when expectations have completely changed. So, look, I think that they still, like, this is a team that I would project to do good things in the offseason and good things next season. I just feel like this season kind of is played out the way that, we're always waiting for like the other shoe to drop and for them to take off. And then when you have injuries hit, like, I don't think that this team, I mean, they haven't been horrible since Monk left, but I also don't think that they have enough to get them through.
I feel like they're leaking oil a little bit right now, at least from what I see offensively.
Yeah.
In these last few games. And I don't know if that's where they're at or in virtue of the road trip or whatever. But ever since that second half started in Madison Square Garden, it's just kind of been leaking oil with trying to score, it looks like.
Yeah, and I would say to that point, again, talk about a team that's figured out a way to stay in it, even though they are leaking out everywhere. You can see that they've changed who they are. Their identity is morphing throughout the season. They're all the way down to they're tied for 15th in defensive rating on the season now. Since the All-Star break, their defensive rating is like a 111.6. It's just slightly above the Boston Celtics defensive rating in the second half. Well, since the All-Star break. So, look, out of necessity, they've had to make some changes here. And I think that they're showing us that, hey, look, we are resilient. We're fighting. We have some missteps here and there, but we're still in it against the Knicks. We're still in it against Boston. All of these games that you've thought, okay, well, do they even have a shot at this? They are. Now we can go back to the Washington game and say, oh, they lost to Washington. Okay. That one-off is okay, as long as you don't have 6 or 7 of those one-offs like they've had. But it was just kind of the reminder of hey, this is who they are. The rest of the games from here on out that we've seen, I think this has been a gritty season. It's been a gritty second half. They're 14-10 second half. They're a top 10 team in the second half of the season since the All-Star break. They fought. They've got injuries. They keep trying to grind through. I just don't know what their ceiling is because of some of these injuries at this point.
All right. We are headed out to Tom's Watch Bar. Come join us. The whole crew going to be out there. James, Jesse, me, KC. We're going to watch UConn and Purdue. We'd love to see you.